Okay, welcome to December's What's Doing at the Boat Shop. It is cold in here. This wood stove is on full blast right now and I'm leaning right on it. Can't even feel it. That's not true. But it's not on because nobody's really here today, but also we're running out of wood. I got to go chase down some cordwood so we can heat ourselves, or some coal. If anybody knows where I can get a ton of coal dropped off here, then hit me up in the comments, because that would be great. These will burn coal as well as wood, so why not? If you missed the HOH, the holiday open house, you're late to the party. That was last weekend. It was pretty awesome. Very successful. Thank you all to those who showed up, and there were many hundreds, if not thousands, that showed up and made it the most successful ever, including our auction, our silent auction, which raised over $18,000, which is very much a new record for us. And thank you to those who donated things to the auction. It's amazing every year for that even in October and November, people start dropping auction items off out of the generosity of their own hearts, and without even being asked. And so we are extraordinarily thankful for that. And as far as net, the things at the open house that bring in the most money, that is by far the greatest. And thank you for those that got your tree here. We ordered 200 trees, and there are 2.5 sad ones left out there. If anyone knows of a home that needs a tree, and if they can't afford it, something like that, we got them right here for you. Come on down. Let's talk about the gig. So not a lot of progress, because the thing about the holiday open house, as much fun as it is, what it does is it causes us to stop doing stuff for about 2 to 3 weeks. And that's been the case here. However, since I have worked a little bit with my nephew was here with me the other day, and we laminated up a couple of frames. But what we have done is laid out basically where the mast steps are going to go, and we're going to put heavier laminated frames in and around where the mast steps are. So this is actually the main mast step. It's pretty far forward. But if you look at the boat, the mainmast is is actually stepped a little bit forward amidships. And so these actually are not going to stay. We'll end up moving these probably back into here somewhere, or a little bit forward, and then laminate frames in through here. But this is Sapele, which is a mahogany substitute. There are several mahogany lookalikes: Sapele, Sipo, Spanish cedar, others that I'm forgetting now, but there are a lot of things that look and act like mahogany, and Sapele is one of those that's fairly cost effective and pretty strong. It's a little more dense, I would say, than mahogany, which is good here because we want it to hold fasteners, but trying to get it to bend is a little bit more difficult. I didn't use steam, this is just a cold bend, but mostly because I didn't want it to get wet, because then you can't really laminate it. And what I did was I started with, I wanted them to be fairly heavy, but not so heavy that there was a lot of spring back. And so I started with a piece that was a little heavier than 1/4, and that's around here broken. And then I ran it through the planer, took a little bit off, went to 1/4 inch, tried that. That broke, and so I finally got to 7/32, and it turns out you can bend 7/32. So this is a little heavy, but it's 7/32, and I guess we can see what the spring back is here. Not too bad. I think we can live with that. So that'll, when we get the shear on and everything, that'll push in and come into shape. But it's going to be rigid. It's not broken anywhere. It doesn't have the stress that you have with these steam bent ones. So those will be good long term. And they're time consuming to make, much more time consuming, say, than steaming some oak. but in the grand scheme, they're going to be a better option. So you got your main mist here, you got your fore mist. You got it marked out on the other side, but I believe right about, oh, it's here, it's right here. So we'll end up laminating these as well. What we'll probably end up doing is putting these back in the steam box and move them forward, bend them up there. They'll actually have to straighten out a little bit up there, which is not a big deal. And I did hear, you know, when you're doing something like this, you get a lot of tales and you get a lot of ideas. And someone who was in the other day said to me that they were working with a Norwegian steam bending, and what they would do is they would bend it the wrong way. Say we were going to bend it like this, they would bend it this way first and then bend it that way, and supposedly that limbered up the whole thing. I don't know, like long term that was better, and you didn't get the breakage, especially at the hard chine points. I mean, I'm willing to try it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It seems it's like folding a piece of paper this way and that way, and then that's where it wants to rip. But I don't think there's a problem with double steaming these, especially if, you know, in this case here, if this radius might actually fit perfectly, you know, here and on the other side, and so that wouldn't be a big deal. If we do need to steam them to get them to straighten out a little bit, I wouldn't worry about that. I don't think that I would steam this and try to bend it more, if that makes sense. And if, you know, if it doesn't work out, you know, if this, like I said, the mast being here, you've got a frame there and there that you'd want to laminate, and the frame here and here that you'd want to laminate. I'm fairly certain that this radius would just scoot forward and be just fine. It would just, you know, get longer. And that was the thing when we built the whaleboat for Mystic Seaport. You had one mold for frames, and that's how they mass produced them, not unlike our Dories. And you bent the frame, and the frame worked out anywhere in the boat. As you went forward, it kind of rocked up like this, and back toward the middle it was down like that. But pretty much for the entire cross section of the boat, you could use your pre-steamed, pre-shaped frames in there. So I don't know. People like to think when you're a boat builder, you know it all, and you got everything figured out. But what you do is you have a set of knowledge and a set of understandings, and you apply those to various parts of the project. And here we're trying to figure out what works best for this particular boat. And that might not be the same for another boat, but one of the best, most fun parts about this job is having other boat builders and friends come in, and we had a little gam around the stove the other day talking about this, and everybody's different ideas, and have you tried this, and this guy used to do that, and so that's how this base knowledge continues to grow. And people always ask me, where'd you learn? I learned my base knowledge here, but I really learned a lot of these things from talking to people, seeing what other people have done, and applying that to my own work. So watching, listening, and learning is as important as doing, and or not as important, but pretty close to being as important. So cold in here. This will be coming along. We can do the laminates, but again, I did these a few days ago, and yeah, that epoxy is kicked now. And that is our problem in here in the winter, is especially a winter like this where we're actually having a winter. It hasn't been this cold around here for a few years, and it is murder on epoxy to try to get it to kick. We're supposed to be glassing the outside of the Point Comfort today in the other room, but we gave up on it just because even if the epoxy's warm when it comes out of the dispenser, as soon as you start spreading it out, it cools down and you can't get it to soak through the cloth. So it's supposed to be close to mid 50s at the end of the week, and hopefully by then we'll be able to spread that epoxy around. So we talked about the stem yet?
We haven't talked about the stem yet.
Okay. Here we have our stem, and I made this up out of several pieces. I was looking for one nice piece of locust, but I didn't have it at the time. I've got it now, but it's pretty green, and I wouldn't make this shape out of a green piece of locust and then expect it to have this shape in 3 months when this boat's coming together. And you do see that a lot. The ship's boat for the Mayflower that we had in here for a while had a bit of a boxer's nose, and I think what happened is they made the stem out of green oak, and over time it kind of did a little bit of a curve. It kind of works its way off to one side. So this here, I had a nice curvy piece right there to make up that bit, and then a nice straight piece for up here. You can see I gave it a step scarf with a couple of bolts. Very thin, so our max dimension here is 2 inches, which is, for a boat this big, is not that thick for the stem. And then the rules for this boat state that you can beef up the scantlings of anything, but you can't shrink them down. So you can't make the boat lighter, but you can make it heavier. What I did here, it's going to be hard to see, but I had our sawyer cut a locust knee, which is on the inside here, and the grain runs perfectly around this curve. But that was 2 inches. This is 2 inches. This is actually a 3-inch piece of live oak that we had around the shop. And so what I did was I glued some locust cheeks on here and shaped them in. So it starts at 2 inch there and kind of grows out to 3 inches as it comes down. And what that does is gives us a little bit more of a surface to land these planks on. Especially here, the garboard's going to be rolling into the rabbet here, and there's a lot of force on the top of that garboard trying to pull itself straight for its whole life. Here, with this kind of surface for it to land on, you might get a couple of fasteners in there instead of just one. Oftentimes what you see is one fastener way at the hood end, and you got a split there, or that always sort of pulls out over time. So the hope is to keep that from happening. And this rabbet here I put in a couple weeks ago using all the scary tools in the shop. I'll break those out and show them to you, but used an angle grinder with a chainsaw chain wheel on it, which removes a lot of material, and then the same grinder with an abrasive disc and also with a metal shaping disc, so I could get this. And this is always an enigma for boat builders, not boat builders, but people just starting out in boat building. You know, how do you make this happen? And what you're basically given from the lofting is a bearding line and a rabbet line. The third line is the apex line that's in there. And obviously you can't really draw that on your piece of wood because you're removing that material. But basically what you do is you get a piece of your plank stock, and you start digging at the bearding line, and you work it in. What I did when I first did this, let's see, I think the most notable one would have been the whaleboat, and it had 1/2 inch planking. And so I took my 1/2 inch chisel and I drove it in until the chisel was buried and my upper showing part of the chisel was right at my rabbet line. And then I knew I had a square cut, and that's obviously going to change as it rolls. And then I just chiseled the material out in between. I hate to say that I used a multi-tool here to make this cut down there, which is achieving the same thing. But you can, take that multi-tool and kind of cut in to achieve this rabbet. But this is still, it might look sort of finished, but it's still a little bit rough, and that's because even as good as your lofting may be, when you get into planking, the planks are going to show you where the real rabbet wants to be, and you're going to have to adjust that as you go. And then up here, this looks ugly and fugly. That's because I don't yet know until the keel is on here how this whole thing is going to transition into the rabbet and the keel. And so I just left meat and material there until we get to that point. And the keel's over there. We'll talk about that at a later date, but we have a 30-foot section of single piece of yellow pine for the keel, and that is a salvaged piece from the Groton Pier, Groton, Connecticut, cut down in the 1800s, and then we'll have to scarf a bit onto the end. But I chose to have the long 30-foot piece forward because you'll encompass both mast steps in that one piece. What you don't want to do is have a keel scarf fall on a mast step and all that. You want to have a nice solid landing, especially for masts like this that are unstayed. You want something pretty solid. So anyway, that's what's going on there. We got a transom sort of figured out here. I was working on this the other day too, trying to get it aligned. What these are just cut-offs from the framing, and I stuck these on to project the rib bands out and the shape out so that I can try to land it on this forward edge of the transom, and then from there I can determine the bevel for the planking, how it's going to all land. But what I'm trying to do now is sort out this space in here, which I'm going to try to fill with some deadwood. But if I can get this in place and get a little bit of a stern post kind of thing in place and then the keel on top, now I know what the extents of my deadwood are, and then with some framing in place I can cut that out of the way and make it up with deadwood. But that's going to be down the road a wee bit. Let's walk over here, Annie. So John, as Abel's been working on this here Mohonk. His first plank's on, and this is the funny boat where we talk about you don't get a whole lot of guidance here on how to make these timber cuts. And a timber cut is, you can see that the garboard and the first plank here are in the same plane, meaning the frame doesn't change in angle as it goes up. And then there's a little knuckle right there that happens for the next plank. And that's really up to the builder. But when you look at some of our plans, what you have here, if you can even make out this Rosetta Stone, first plank, no timber cuts. Number 2, all up 10 inches, whatever that means. Forward, out a hair from M1. M1 and M2 are even. Aft, in a bit from M2. Transom, in a hair from aft. Okay, sure. So, in the parlance of Lowell's Boat Shop, what that means is up 10 inches, and it's not going to work here because this has already been trimmed, but you take your ruler, put the tip right there, and you rotate it in until the 10 just hits the place on the frame where the 10 hits, and you draw a line, and that's where you cut it. And that was a standard cut for Lowell's. And that's how that was determined. But that's sort of your starting point. That's where I would go with M1 and M2 to make them even. And then I would adjust according to this. This is more information than any of our other notes have for making these cuts. This is a very in-depth set of notes. And I'm sure they made these because they knew they were making several of these over the years for Mohonk. And they knew that they all had to look the same. And they were trying to get them as close as possible. But if you put any two of our other boats that we, sorry if it's shaking, Annie, I'm shivering. Can you see here? See that? You read that fine print? any two of our other boats side by side would not be the same. As much as we build from plans and all that, they all vary very much so. And then you get over here to our Dory bar. Things getting pretty rad at this point. We got, let's see. Come on, huh? How about that? Okay, now I know you're all gonna want one. And if you want one, we can make these for you out there for your backyard party. But great for hanging out with your friends, serving them beer, that whole thing. For a limited time only. Anyway, this is replacing Winona, who's sadly out there getting used up by the ice. But this is a pretty cool thing. Be out there in the lawn. And we'll go look at this long point in here. I keep calling it a long point. Point comfort. John's gone home because he's smart. It's too cold. But you see this side, he's got draped with cloth, ready for epoxy. That'll happen tomorrow. Over here, been done. And you'll notice these sort of awful looking spots. This is just fairing compound. So where the plywood scarves were, see, now my mouth's getting too cold. Where the plywood scarves were, there may have been some unfairness, so he put some fairing compound in there and longboarded it so it would look nice and fair, because especially something like this where you've got a big panel, you really run the risk of, if you paint it with anything gloss or semi-gloss, you're going to see any kind of waggle in it. And so getting a nice fair curve on it, nice fair surface, goes a long way for your final paint job. Now, what helps that a lot is this gets a spray rail, I believe, coming right down the chine, and then it gets another sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, another decorative sort of piece here that breaks up the big top sides. So that helps with stuff like that, but still you don't want to have any real visible waggles. And then you can see the same up here, and this is probably good for our listeners to note. So the plans here called for, you can't get the plywood to make this sort of hollow curvy bit, and this is a technique they would have used in the Chesapeake as well. They did file bottoms, they're called, Pete Color, I think, used to do them. But plans called for, vertical strips going this way to make this up, and then John went over it with these diagonal ones. But he was saying that if he did it again, he would probably do diagonal strips going at 90 degrees to each other. And the reason is you can see where the fairing is in the low spots, in that if they were going diagonal to each other, that probably would have eliminated that, or at least reduced that a little bit. So if you set out to make your own, start doing this with 45s going one way, and then do it with 45s going the other way, and you might not need as much fairing filler in there. And it will be open 10 to 4 all week, and all week till the 19th, till the 20th, till Friday. What's that, the 19th? Next week we may or may not be here. How do you like that? So if you want to find us, email is probably the best. You can try to call. When I say we won't be here, we'll probably end up being here anyway, because that's just this kind of time of year. But if you really need us, email is best. And if you're desperate for a holiday gift, and we have it here in the building, we can make sure you get that. So let us know. Our new apparel is pretty cool. And I say our new apparel, we always try to update stuff every year. I'll be right back. Hold on. Hold on there, Annie. I like to think that I got a pretty good eye for these things. But this new design here, which I really like, is lifted right off of this old advertisement from the, it's got to be late 1800s. So right there. And then the boat looks kind of like that boat, but it's not. This actually is from a mid-century, 50s era Boy and Girl Scout advertisement, which I think is pretty cool. So I really love that one. And that one will be around for a while, I hope. But be on the lookout out there, folks, on YouTube. If you get old magazines, old publications, especially New England ones, or like old National Fisherman's or something like that, they'll oftentimes have old advertising in them. And if you see old, not even Lowell's advertising, that's great. We would love it. But boats and dories in general, any of that stuff is super great. And old photos as well. If a lot of people are protective, understandably so, of their old photos, old things like that. Even if you don't want us to have them, bring them in and we'll scan them just so we have the digital copy. And that goes a long way to preservation. So it's rare that I get to see new photos of this area. And I was sent one the other day, a very rare photo of a schooner being built on the river here, which is pretty cool, in Amesbury. There's a number of them in Newburyport, that's not uncommon, but seeing a schooner on the ways in Amesbury is pretty uncommon, so very cool. All right, everyone, enjoy your holiday. Hope it's safe and happy.